Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. The politics lead now. Iraq is once again starting to look like a war zone, and Republicans say they saw that coming all along.
In other wars and other conflicts, we have left residual forces behind. This is an existential threat to the United States of America.
Let's bring in Bobby Ghosh, international editor for Time Magazine, and Peter Baker, White House correspondent for the New York Times and author of Days of Fire, Bush and Cheney in the White House. Peter, I'll start with you. President Obama campaigned on ending this war, but just when he thought he was out, they pulled him back in.
No, that's right. He just can't quite escape it. You know, just 2 weeks ago, he gave a speech at West Point in which he tried to map out the future of American foreign policy and national security in a post-Iraq and post-Afghanistan era, one in which we don't use military force very much. Here we are 2 weeks later, and he's contemplating airstrikes or drone strikes right back in the same place that has defined his presidency all along. So it's exactly where he doesn't want to be, and you can sort of hear the frustration, I think, in his voice today when he talked on the South Lawn.
Bobby, I was talking to senior administration officials earlier today, as I'm sure you've been, and they are laying this all at the feet of Maliki. They said that he would not let the U.S. troops stay there, and here's a quote. The Iraqis said no about the U.S. troops staying there after 10 years of our presence. Virtually the entire political class wanted us out. Even the Kurds wouldn't press it. Are they overstating the case there? Did the U.S. have to leave in 2011?
Yes, absolutely they did. An Iraqi government official told me a couple of years ago that at one point the U.S. wanted to leave 30,000 American soldiers, just as we did in South Korea, as we did in Japan, and as we are proposing to do a much smaller force in Afghanistan. But the Iraqis refused to sign a status of forces agreement, which would give American soldiers immunity from Iraqi law. And the Iraqis said, if you're not going to sign that, you can't stay. So it wasn't so much that we left. In the end, we were asked to leave. And I wonder how Maliki is feeling about that decision right now.
Peter, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told the BBC yesterday that she does not support airstrikes. Take a listen.
I agree with the White House's rejection and reluctance to do the kind of military activities that the Maliki government is requesting, namely fighter aircraft, to provide close support for the Army and also to go after targets. That is not a role for the United States.
A dovish Hillary Clinton on Iraq, Peter. What do you make of that?
Yeah, we're sort of reversing the 2008 Democratic primary campaign, right, where Hillary Clinton played the role of the hawk, defending her vote to some extent to authorize the war in the first place, and Barack Obama saying that he was against it from the first place and she had made a terrible mistake. So, you know, the great thing about politics, and whether it be international or domestic, is you can never completely predict where it's going to go.
Bobby, Senator John McCain, he calls this an existential crisis, that ISIS poses a threat to the United States. Tell us about the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. You call him the most successful terrorist since bin Laden.
Yes, I think he is. He's also known as Abu Dua, and what makes him incredibly successful is his willingness, his ambition, not simply to commit mayhem, which was bin Laden's main ambition, but to actually capture and hold territory. He wants to rule, and he is at the moment ruling large swaths of territory in Syria and in Iraq. And he's shown the ability to capture cities like Mosul, 2 million people, a large modern city. And he's shown the ability and the willingness to take on conventional military forces, both in Syria against Assad's forces and in Iraq against Baghdad's forces. These are things that bin Laden never tried. These are things that very few of al-Qaeda's many different franchises in the world have attempted. Abu Dua, on the other hand, has not only tried this, he is, at the moment, succeeding. And that makes him a magnet for jihadis around the world. They will rally to his banner. They'll want to come fight for him because they see him as somebody who's doing things in a different way and who's capturing and holding territory.
And Peter, I'm anxious to see how this plays out on the Republican side of the aisle as well for the presidential candidates, because there's a real interventionist versus isolationist, for want of better terms, debate going on there.
No, that's exactly right. Look, there's a lot of fatigue in the country across party lines with not just Iraq, but even American involvement in the world more broadly. The latest polls, of course, still show that most Americans think that going into Iraq in the first place was a mistake, and more interestingly, that America doesn't necessarily have to play the leading role in the world. That's quite a retreat from sort of our self-identity that we've had over the last number of decades. So, you know, there's not going to be, I think, a great appetite on the part of the American public to go back into Iraq, even in the limited form that the president is talking about, and that's something he's going to have to navigate politically. You don't hear him saying that he's going to go to Congress and ask for their support the way he did last fall with Syria when he contemplated missile strikes. I think he recognizes that will be politically problematic. There's also a different legal basis since the original authorization for war in Iraq, I think, never expired.
Peter Baker, Bobby Ghosh, thank you so much.